Hey guys, we're changing our radiator on an 03 Dodge Ram with 5.7 liter Hemi. So this will work for a lot of years. Step one, drain the radiator. We come up underneath. I'll show you where the drain is. Kind of splashing a little bit. Let's see, right there is a hex. Let's see if we can get an angle on it. Right there, you see that hex? I put a 17mm wrench on it and turned left, counterclockwise. And once it comes out so far, it opens up that little valve to drain the radiator. So that's step one. And we'll give this a little airflow. We'll pop the coolant reservoir. Here we go, maybe it'll come out a little faster. Step two. Let's get our coolant reservoir out of the way. We got two 10mm bolts here. This is just the little drain valve. If you overfill it, it'll come out there. We'll take this hose off with our pliers. We'll get these two 10mm bolts out and pull this out. It kind of fits into the fan shroud. These little slots. Doesn't always come out easy, but it shouldn't be too tough. All right, we're back. We got the reservoir out of the way. It just pushes back. Don't worry about the one hose connected to it, the big one. And loosened up this clamp on the radiator. See if we can get the hose to spin. All right, it will, so we can take it off. Shouldn't leak any coolant. We got most everything drained. We'll slide that, bend it out of the way. I've disconnected the washer fluid sensor and pump wiring harness. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. And I just put a rubber cap on the pump so it doesn't leak all my fluid. Only lost a splash. All right, now we've got the, we want to get this radiator shroud out. I've already taken the clutch fan out. Got another video on that, should be right next to this one on my playlist. Just search up Fur Curl, Dodge Ram clutch fan. Should pop up. And all right, so clutch fan's out of the way. We need a 13mm. Grab that. And a ratchet. All right, I had a phone call. Now, I got the two 13mm bolts loose from the fan shroud. They don't like to come out of there, the bolts, but they will. And you got to pull up on the fan shroud because it's locked into these clips that are attached to the radiator. So you just pull up, and it's not easy to do. I mean, they're in there pretty good. So expect a little resistance. And we are still connected on the washer reservoir. I forgot to pop the little hose out. If it's groove, that's okay. Got it. All right. Here's our shroud with windshield wiper reservoir. Now, the black connector, the pump, this black one, it's gonna have a red safety in it. You gotta take like a little screwdriver and pop that red clip up before you can squeeze the tab and pull it out. This one didn't want to come out. Put a screwdriver up from the bottom to help that clip out without breaking it. And got that connector off. Put a little rubber cap so I didn't lose any washer fluid right here. Just a spare one I had laying around. You can collect your washer fluid if you don't have something like that laying around. But the shroud's out. Not too bad of a radiator to do. All right, we've got to collect our hardware. All right, let's look down in there now. These are the clips that the fan shroud clips into. They were kind of stiff. All right, so we got to get this lower radiator hose off, kind of like a squeeze clamp. So I'm gonna get that from the underneath. They're a pain. You want to use some big pliers. The top one I took off with those bigger pliers there. You can't see them under the ratchet, and it was still pretty tough to squeeze that together. All right, so that's all we have. On this side of the radiator is just that radiator hose. And then we have these, I believe they're 13 millimeter bolts right here. One right there and one right there. To get to that one, we're gonna use an extender. Let's see if the camera can pick it up. Come on, camera. Right in there, that bolt. So we're gonna need a short extender, 13 millimeter for that. Now from the front side, it's all open, which is really nice. We got the transmission cooler here, which is bolted right there to the radiator. So we're gonna use a ratcheting wrench. If you don't have a ratcheting wrench, just use a wrench, it'll just take you longer. And then it just clips into the radiator right here. So I'm gonna get that lower radiator hose off and undo this bolt right here. First, I'm gonna get these bolts. Maybe it'll swing forward for us a little bit more so we can get more hand room on this bolt. So let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so after loosening the top bolts on the radiator, it kind of pushes forward a bit. Pulled that hose off, came off easier than expected. With the radiator pushed forward a little bit, got a little play. You can actually get a ratchet in on that trans cooler, on that one bolt. And this trans cooler should slide to the left. It pops into little grooves on the radiator, the two lines coming off of it. So there's that. It's loose, it's off. Now we got the power steering cooler. You can fit 3/8 ratchet with the 10 millimeter. There's two bolts holding the power steering cooler on right down from the bottom. I'm on one of them right now, far left side, far right side. We'll take those two bolts off. And once this power steering cooler is off, we should be able to just snag the radiator right out of there. I'm having trouble keeping my ratchet on. It's a weird spot. The other one's a little easier to get to. I always start with the toughest bolts to get to. I like to be smooth sailing at the end as much as possible. Always do the hardest thing first. This guy just, I think a ratcheting wrench would be better in this spot. This bolt is longer than it needs to be. Don't forget to drop a like and a sub, guys, if you made it this far in the video. Really appreciate it. Could probably just hit it with an extender. We got enough play. It's just gonna be easier. Medium-sized extender, a little bit of wobble at the end. We should be able to go right through here and get on the bolt. That's a little better. Now I got enough room for my air ratchet. I just lifted the peg of the radiator out of the passenger side. All right, we have a nut on the end now. On the other side of it, that's spinning. Probably a 10 mil. We pop a 10 mil on it. And this guy's gonna go through the hole of the new radiator. I'll show you the little hole that it goes through. There we go. Grab that nut, don't lose it. Maybe clean off this bolt afterwards. It's real nasty. There's the nut on the other end. It was staying still there for a while. All right, now we got the next one. This one we don't need the extender on. It'll just go straight up short. Cracker free. get our 10mm wrench on the inside. You can just feel for it. Go, there it is. Yeah, air ratchet would make this a little easier, huh? Let's grab the air ratchet. It's just an awkward position to get into. Send this guy up underneath the vehicle. Hold the wrench. Alright, we got the nut in our hand, gonna let it drop down. Got our bolt and our nut out of there. Grab our hardware from the top of the radiator because this guy is getting pulled out. There we go. We got our radiator pulled out of there. Now we'll come over to the radiator. So that's where that nut and bolt was for the power steering. See the corrosion? That's where that was. Now if your new radiator doesn't come with these bushings, make sure you transfer them over. Same story with the bushing down here on the bottom passenger side. There's a little bushing on that peg. Make sure that goes in. We got a little cushion right here on the hook. So make sure you transfer everything over that you need to transfer over. Some radiators come with everything, some radiators don't. Let's get this new radiator installed. So we're gonna pretty much reverse order this sucker. Slap that radiator in, get it close to the peg where it sits in on the passenger side, and get that power steering cooler and transmission cooler bolted on there. Alright, we got our new radiator in, came with all the bushings and everything, no transfer needed. Put that radiator in, no problem. Kind of hooked it around right here where the hook goes, but still loose on the back side. And it really helps to have two people, but it is what it is. I was by myself. To line this up while you're lining up, they're all wiggly wobbly. Anyways, got the transmission lines hooked back in, clipped back in, and set the bolts in. Now this, instead of it sliding in to a rectangle socket kind of spot, it had bolts, so I had to fish a bolt out of my spare bolt tray. No problems there. I put another bolt in there, should. It's in there better than it was in the old one. Yeah, so that's in. That's the tricky part. Just if you don't have a helper. Now it's time to bring that power steering bracket back into play. We got our two long bolts with the nuts. We got our air ratchet on forward, ready to rock and roll. So now we got to line this up with the holes. Bring this guy up through here. Careful with it. Don't knock it around, cause any damage. We got it sitting up there now. We get our first bolt fed through. See if we can line it up into the spot it goes in. Looks like it's that hole right there. It's hard to see anything, that's for sure. And this whole thing clips around the radiator. I think what I want to do is take this back out of its groove to give me a little more room to goof around with it. So the power steering cooler has these hooks on it, and I cannot even see what I'm doing. Get this guy out of the way. get up underneath. I think I'll have a better time from the bottom trying to get this power steering cooler to fit in. Alright, I see the problem here. It's a little fatter. There we go. There we go. Just gotta get her lined up. Gotta bring her over a little. Kind of like hooks in. And it is really awkward, guys, to get it to hook into place. Get both sides into place so we can slide back and forth easy. There we go. Both hooks are in place. Now we're running blindfolded. There we go. One bolt almost through. It's almost lined up. I'm spinning it to get it in. There we go. One of them's in. I know I put the other bolt right here somewhere. There we go. Perfect. Got her nut. Put her nut on the end of here. And now you can't see much, but power steering cooler has like hooks, and it hooks into the radiator, and then you gotta line them up. And this one doesn't want to line up. We're gonna have to force it and find the groove. There we go. We found the first hole. Now we gotta get it through the next hole. There we go. Got it. Perfect. All right. Kind of annoying. Now we tighten them up. Not too tight, just snug them up. Don't want to bend anything. We got our wrench on the back of the nut. And this little air wrench, it doesn't torque that hard. There we go. Got that in place. Now we got to hook our radiator back over this bar into place. We are in our groove on the passenger side with that bushing. Good to go. Now we've got to put the radiator back in with the bolts that go up here. And those are still in the old radiator, so we'll need to grab them. So let's flip the camera up here. Having technical issues. There we go. Nice and shiny, looking good. In my experience, these bolts do not like to come out of there. They get, the washer gets sucked onto the bushing. We'll take a little flathead screwdriver and see if it'll pop out. Maybe we'll hammer them. There we go. Just kind of gave it like a nice little press on my bench. Offset just a little. We got to move the radiator around to get it to line up. There we go. Press that radiator back down so that everything's in place. Get the other one now. Yeah, we're gonna have to smack this one out of there. Wow. And it's in there. It's in there. Let's grab a real hammer. You can't take the passenger side bushing out with the bolt still in it. It just doesn't work that way. There we go. Hammered it out. Got my hardware back. And these were 13 mil. Get that guy going in there. You're going to need that extender on this side to access it easier. Just grab our air ratchet. Bada boom. Give it a little extra torque. There we go. Radiator's in. I do believe next step is get our radiator hose put back on our lower. But we just kind of pushed it backwards. A little bit of coolant in that hose still. There we go, it's popped on. The way I got to this clamp was from the underneath. We'll clamp that back on really quick. Crawl underneath it here. Bring pliers with me. Channel locks. We'll get that clamp back on there. And this clamp is too big for those channel locks now. Let's grab some wider channel locks. See if we can just install it from the top. If we can spin this hose enough. Won't let us spin it. Clamp. Ooh, that hurts. Alright, there we go. That's enough to see what we're doing. See if we can get a good grip on this. That's a pretty good grip. I'm going to spin it back down so that the clamp is facing downwards, not in the way of the shroud at all. We've got our wiring harnesses and our hose for our windshield wiper fluid in a good spot. And where this radiator was leaking was the where the metal pinches to the plastic. There's a seal in there. Those go out. Pop this guy back in here. Reservoir's in the way a little bit. And this is gonna slide into those clips. You gotta line it up. Line it up with the clips. They're lined up. Oh, that one fell out of its groove. We got to press down with some force to get it to clip in and line up where it goes. I'm going to take this opportunity to hook our windshield wiper fluid back up. Start with the hose. Bam. Hose is on. Clip it back into the reservoir, into its grooves. We got our wiring harness. The one to the pump clips on, and then you slide the red clip down to lock it in. The other one just clips on, nothing fancy. Doesn't want to line up for me. There we go. Come on, buddy. There we go, clipped in. Bada boom. Washer fluid is back hooked up. We've got a hose over on this side to hook up, but first we're going to put those bolts through the shroud. 2 medium-sized bolts, 13 mil. One started. Let's get the next one. May have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it to start. It wants to come over to line up. There we go. Tight. tight. Yeah, bada boom. Well, while the reservoir is still out of the way, maybe we should put the clutch fan on. Still have the belt routed pretty much where it goes. To get the clutch fan out, you can come out through the top, but you got to have the belt off. Yeah, I think it's clutch fan time. We'll get that put in. We got a new clutch fan put together. Grab that. It spins on clockwise, just like every other bolt. We're gonna slide it in between the AC and the alternator. Make sure you don't try to cross thread it or anything. It should slide on like butter. And it can be a little bit of a pain, honestly. The water pump wants to move with us, so to get a little pressure to keep that water pump from spinning so we can spin it on, we'll put the belt back on. And all you need is a 3/8 ratchet for that. We'll get the belt lined up exactly how it's supposed to. Put the belt on everything except for the idler pulley. Make sure everything's in its groove. It is. Now all we need is a 3/8 ratchet. And we're gonna turn this clockwise. There's a square 3/8 groove in the tensioner pulley. And you just put your ratchet in there. Get this belt lined up again. It came off one of the pulleys. That'll happen. Get every one of them in their proper grooves. There we go. Now we're going to compress this tensioner assembly. Lost it. Get back in there. There we go. All right, our belt's back on. Now let's see if we can get that clutch fan to spin on. Just tricky to get that first thread started. Trying to find it. It's not working with me. Come on, baby. Get started on there. Oh my God, this is so awkward. Because you don't have much room with this shroud and everything. There we go, we got her started. Now we can just spin the fan and it's tightening up. Eventually when it gets close to tight, the fan will just spin and not the big nut. Alright, now to get this off, you should have a spanner wrench, something to stop the water pump pulley. And might not be exactly the right size. 1 7/16 or 36 millimeter fan wrench. You can rent the spanner tool kit, clutch fan kit from the parts store. Here's my spanner tool, which locks in my water pump pulley. It's locked in. And then our big wrench. And we just tighten that up. Now the clutch fan's installed. Belt's on, clutch fan installed. As far as bleeding the coolant, this is pretty much just gonna self burp itself. when you get all the coolant in there. Fill her all the way up to the max, start it up. Fill it up while it's running before it gets hot. Never open these caps hot, guys. And let her get up to temperature, let her cool off, refill, top off again, check it the next day, and you should be good to go on that note. After doing a radiator, thermostat, something like this, if you're having an overheating issue, you might have some air in your system. Depending on what kind of car it is, some cars like to collect air more than others. And we've got our 3 10mm bolts. Upper radiator hoses clamped back on. 3 10mm. Top of the reservoir. We've got this hose right here. This little guy goes from the reservoir to the top of the radiator, driver's side. Grab that. $10mm socket. We'll get this hose clamp back on. These do not have to be overly tight. Just get them tight. Just going into a plastic shroud. Make sure your little hose is where it's supposed to go, off the reservoir. Make sure our hose is looking good here. It is. And bada boom, eh? So we're gonna fill it up with the proper coolant and start it up. Top it off, put the cap back on, pull it outside, let it warm up, let it cool down. After it's totally, completely cool, not hot at all, take that cap off, top it off again, check it again the next day. I think that about does it. If you got a drain plug on your new radiator, make sure it's tight. They've came in loose for me before. And I think that's about all the notes I have for you. Thanks for watching. And have a great day. Have fun. Get her done.